A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, the election has been called, but I wonder if you have made your place to be at a Meet the Candidate forum, because there are churches all around Australia, something like 70 going on 80 different electorates are going to have Meet the Candidate forums that are organised by Freedom for Faith, and the opportunity for candidates to address the Christian constituency in that town or in that community. Well, back with us today, Mike Southon from Freedom for Faith is back with us. Freedom for Faith, a wonderful organisation, and being so successful, activating the church to defend religious freedom. Mike Southon, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thanks, Neil. It's great to be back.
Mike, things are underway. People are turning up at some Meet the Candidate forums. They're putting questions to their candidates and sitting members, and all sorts of responses are coming back. People are able in these to be able to make an assessment of where the parties and where the candidates sit. That's pretty important with a very important election that's coming up.
Yes, this is probably one of the most critical elections for Christians for a very long time. Not only the issues around religious freedom, but there are issues of how we care for our most vulnerable, what we're going to be doing, what our country is going to look like over the next 10 years. So it's very important that we get to hear from our candidates, from both major parties or independents, what they believe, where they stand on some of these really vital issues.
And the questions that candidates are going to be asked, some of those are coming from the very top of our various Christian denominations, but there's always that freedom for people from the floor to be able to ask a question. How does it all work?
Well, each forum is being run by its local church, so there will be variance in each one. But generally speaking, they're going to ask the candidates 5 opening questions. And these questions were developed by leaders in a large number of Christian denominations, the major Christian denominations across Australia. And so these 5 questions will first be asked of the candidates. And then after that, there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions of the candidates, and using some kind of moderation system so that so a number of good questions from the audience can be asked of the candidates.
And are these candidate forums a little bit like a keep your candidate accountable? How can that work in your town or in your community, in the electorate that you live in? How can it best work for you?
Well, it's great to ask the candidate, if you've got a sitting MP, you can ask them what they have done in the past 3 years and how they can explain how they've been voting in the past 3 years. But just as importantly, do the same thing in 3 years' time. The church that holds a candidate forum this time round will hold one again in 3 years' time. And everybody can come back again and say, well, in 2025, you made these promises about religious freedom. How did you keep those promises? How are things going? Why should we vote for you again?
I know there are a lot more people becoming a lot more political animals, a little more astute around what's happening at election time, taking an interest in what Christian values are and the way they clash with the emerging secular values. Is it wise when you're going along to these forums to take notes so that you can come back next election and hold those candidates accountable? Is it something that you would say to people, take notes, or is there someone taking the notes for you and it's feeding it back to a central headquarters?
Well, by all means, take notes, but most of these forums will be live streamed, which is great if you can't get there on the day, and so you can watch it online, or you could watch it the day after or leading up to the election. So the live streaming will keep a record of what the candidates have said, and because it's up there on YouTube forever, we can actually go back next year and the following year and go back to those once they're elected and say, you made these promises, now we're asking you to keep them.
We used to rely on particular media personalities or lobby groups to sit down with leaders, have an interview and seek some level of commitment. This really, in our day and age where you can do a live stream from your local church, you can get that same effect in your local church, in your local community. And are you encouraging people to take up the opportunity? The technology's there and this is the way you use it?
Absolutely. The days when an archbishop walks into a prime minister's office to negotiate a change in legislation are gone. Politicians don't actually believe that faith leaders represent their membership. So the way that we convince them is by having the whole membership, the whole church and electorate turn up, sit in their seats and be there asking the questions. Because politics is all about votes. And in many of our electorates for this election, 300, 400 votes may decide who wins and who loses. So as our candidates are pursuing votes, by giving them a room full of people who vote, who haven't yet made up their mind, asking them questions, that is the most powerful way of convincing them that this is an issue that they need to take seriously.
You mentioned that this is a crucial election to get things right. I wonder if you've got a brief thought or two around what's at stake here, because, when we're talking to you, Mike, we're talking about the freedoms that are at risk. What's at stake? What's that comes to mind for you?
Well, both individual religious freedom, our ability to say what we believe and not have that censored or removed as apparently hate speech or discrimination or misinformation. This freedom was coming under pressure under the last government. And thank God, when we pointed out problems, the Labor government of the day did withdraw legislation, hasn't done anything that would significantly undermine our individual religious freedom. But these concepts, these ideas keep floating up. And so this is going to be ongoing conversation in this next government, whoever is in power. But also our institutional religious freedoms, the ability to come together and make an organisation that lives according to our faith. Again, proposals were brought up, particularly by the Greens, to remove the ability of faith-based organisations, particularly our schools, to choose to employ people who live out and uphold that faith. Both of these sets of issues are going to be major conversations over the next 3 years for our next government. So it'll be very important, whoever is in power, whether it be Labor minority or Liberal minority or one of them makes a majority somehow, we need both our parties to commit to working with us to protect religious freedom as these conversations come.
And as it stands, we don't have any great commitment from either side. And making that commitment before the election becomes the all-important commitment that we need to see being made. Are you finding that there's any reluctance from parties or candidates in your experience, and really you can reflect on what's been going on in previous years even here, is there a reluctance to commit to areas around religious freedom?
Yes, there has been. When religious freedom becomes an issue, the press can sometimes try and spin that as bigotry and hatred and things like that. And for that reason, we've actually seen the conservative side of politics not engage very strongly with it in the past couple of years for fear of being branded with these sorts of labels. Also, maybe they think they can take the Christian vote for granted. Labor have made, in the past, leading up to the previous election, made a few commitments to religious freedom, which they did stand by. But again, neither side has made particularly strong commitments for many years on religious freedom. I've had lots of strong promises from individual MPs, senior MPs in both parties, but it doesn't really count until the party publicly says, this is what we'll protect, this is what we promise.
As you say, it's been getting harder and harder to knock on doors and to be heard as a Christian when it comes to the sorts of policies that the parties are putting forward. This gives a great opportunity, doesn't it, to actually say what Christians believe for all the candidates in your community, because the likelihood is those candidates want to get in front of an audience too so that they can talk about what they believe.
It's really hard for them to find an audience. There's not that many groups of people who can organise 300 to 400 people in a room and say, come, talk to us, hear what our concerns are. So this is actually a really great opportunity. And I think both major parties would have rocks in their head if they're not turning up, because we're giving them the opportunity to come and hear genuinely our concerns, not what the press says our concerns are, but what we say they are. And then they get to say back to us what we're going to do without being mediated by the media, by the press, by Facebook, by anybody else. Come and talk to us directly. I would think it would be a really attractive opportunity.
And because it's being live streamed, it's being recorded, it's going to be there in perpetuity, you can come back to that and hold those candidates to account for the things that they shared in your local church. Hey, you've also got a petition going right now, and the petition all about requesting some commitment from both sides to how they will be standing about religious freedom. That petition, just remind us how listeners can actually sign that.
You can find the petition on our website, freedomforfaith.org.au. It's right there on the main page. And this petition is asking both sides to commit to both protecting our individual rights to religious freedom, to say and to live according to our faith, and our institutional rights so that our churches and our schools and our charities can continue to operate according to our faith. We are going to be making both parties very aware of how many people have signed, what electorates they're in, and we're really hoping that this can start creating a strong momentum to convincing people to protect religious freedom.
I imagine planning for a Meet Your Candidate forum is something that might take a few weeks because you need to alert everyone around, but it's not too late even at this point to actually run one of these Meet the Candidate forums in your town.
If you're quick, we could put one together. You can send us an email. But more importantly as well, not more importantly, but equally importantly, is if your church isn't running a candidate forum, quite likely another church in your electorate is. So go along, support that church and get involved. Tell the people in your church, go and participate in this forum. Tell the people in the churches next door to you that you're friends with, go and get involved.
Well, Mike, there is a special website. I know you're hoping that there'll be listeners today who will visit, and the one that you can go and get more detail and find out how you can have a Meet Your Candidate forum in your church, in your community, meetyourcandidate.org.au. meetyourcandidate.org.au. Our guest is Mike Southon. Mike is Executive Director of Freedom for Faith. Been doing an amazing job activating the church to defend religious freedom. So why don't you take advantage of that website, meetyourcandidate.org.au, and see if there is a Meet the Candidate forum in your town. Mike, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us once again today on 2020.
Thanks, Neil. Always great to chat.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.